Hi, this is Anna Imagination, and welcome to the Ethical. I can say this, the Ethical Asshole, and I am your host, the Salty Bitch. So, I'm I'm doing my own philosophy and my own logic courses now, and I'm like, yes, I can totally do this. But there's I don't know what the hell is going on with everybody else. Whenever I look at philosophy, I'm like, why are they making it so boring? You know who made it really exciting? Douglas Adams. A lot of people don't know that he was a philosopher. Douglas Adams was a philosopher. Don't let him kid you. He was a philosopher. He was totally a philosopher. And when you study philosophy, you look at Douglas Adams and you go, oh, he was totally a philosopher. But no one knows that he was. For God's sakes, he wrote a book called The Dark, Deep Tea Time of the Soul. What was that book called? Like, it is such a philosophy book. It's great. And the last, so philosophy ends, and then there's life after philosophy. There needs to be a thing. It's called life after philosophy. So life after philosophy is literally when you just become silly, goofy, and humorous, because it's life after philosophy, and you realize, oh, you can't take this shit serious. And that's the whole, that is the moral of the lesson. That is literally the long, dark tea time of the soul. Yes, it's the long, dark tea time of the soul. I'm going to tell you right now, Douglas Adams was a philosopher. And the reason why people don't know he was a philosopher is because they didn't study philosophy, but he's funny. So they don't realize, they don't process. And life after philosophy really is different. It really, the best example of this that I've ever seen, aside from the long, dark tea time of the soul, is the Dalai Lama. He had a talk that he was giving, and he gets on the podium and he pulls out this hanky and he just puts it on his head randomly, and he just starts talking with it. And we see this with Einstein as well, and it's really life after philosophy. And when you're all done and said, and this is it really, the moral of the story, when you get done with it, you have this moment of, this is the meaning of life, and this is what you don't understand. This is why he had the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. This is why. It's because when you're done with the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, you realize that there's only three things that matter. And those three things, are we all listening? This is the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything is joy, love, people. Now, was that so hard? Was that so hard? Is it? And it's a mystery. It's been a mystery, and I really don't know why it's a mystery. It's not hard. It really was hard, because you spend your whole life, what does it mean? And I'll tell you what, you're taking yourself too seriously, which is the whole reason we have existentialism. Because existentialism comes in and says, oh, good God, they're taking themselves so seriously. Boom, you are nothing and you are insignificant, which is the entire purpose of existentialism. It is the ego annihilator. Existentialism, I want you all to write that down. Existentialism is the ego annihilator. And nothing in the world shows you how absolutely irrelevant you and your little opinion is. So ego is this magnificent person inside of your brain. He's got a big chest and he walks around flaunting his stuff. And he's got a little sidekick, his crony, called opinion. And it's opinion and ego wandering around in your brain, bullying everybody around. I'm the best that there is. And here's opinion going, this is what I think about everything. And you walk into philosophy. I'm a ninth. What is it? Not a ninth grade. I'm a freshman now. I never went to university, just saying. So you go to university and you're like, oh, I'm a college student now. I have to use really big words. And they go into philosophy. And the philosopher goes, no. We got to solve this. And Plato knew this. This is why they invented existentialism. How do you do this? Oh, I know how to do it. Let's give them existentialism. Nothing crushes the ego more like existentialism. So you walk into your first philosophy class and you think you're all hot stuff because you've got ego and opinion. And then boom, I'm going to show you how irrelevant you are. You don't matter because you are not matter, because this is physics in disguise. We fooled killed you. Yeah, that's what philosophers do. So when you're done with philosophy, at the end of it all, we have something called life after philosophy, which is exactly where Douglas Adams was when he said, you know what we need to do? I need to write Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because it's all for joy, love, and people. Let's destroy the planet, he says. And this is what we do at the end of philosophy, right before you decide to, enjoy life after philosophy. It's like the graduation ceremony. First, you gotta go through history mystery. Oh, history mystery is a bitch. I loved history mystery. I was there for a week. It took me a week. This is a 1 week final exam. I'm gonna say that all again, people. The final exam of philosophy is 1 week. Actually, it's however long it's going to take you. It took me a week, 5 days. Oh, I called it the cave. Do you remember when I was in the cave? If you are not new to my channel, you know when I was in the cave. The cave, if you are new to my channel, is when I was gone for a week going, I'm in the cave. I'm reverse engineering all of history forward and backwards. I will be back later. So what it is, this is the Akashic Records. It is the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records, spoiler alert, the Akashic Records is someone's philosophy final exam. That's what it is. You basically take everything you learned in philosophy, and the teacher says to you, all right, you got all that down? Now reverse engineer all of history using math, logic, and physics backwards and forwards. And now you've got to use logic, math, and physics to reverse engineer all of history logically and mathematical with probability forwards and then backwards until you complete the entire line that is all of time. It took me a week. I have no other points of data to compare this to aside from the Akashic Records, but I have no idea how long it took that. So I'm sitting here doing my final exam, and I've got a bunch of dumb shits going, did you read the Akashic? I'm in the middle of my exam. No, I didn't read the goddamn Akashic Records. I'm in the middle of my exam. Like, I did this for 30 years of research, 30 years of philosophy studies, 30 years of this. And no one, like, you've got to complete philosophy and logic. You cannot pull this off until you finish ontology. No one ever gets through ontology. They fizzle out of metaphysics halfway through. Nietzsche kind of made it through, and that's what thus spoke Zarathustra was. That's what Zarathustra. So thus spoke Zarathustra is the Akashic Records. Nietzsche's way. This is his work, and I did the same thing. So I wrote all of history forward and backwards. And then I had all these people going, oh my God, have you read the Akashic? And they started, and I'm like, no, what are you doing? I'm in the middle of my final exam, man. So I shut the world away after that. I got really pissy, and people are like, wow, she's such a bitch. Well, yeah, I'm doing this exam week. It's exam week, guys. And God, I understand me now so much. The point of comprehension is such a blessing. So when you finish, okay, so after this is the history mystery. It's when you complete your version of the Akashic Records. So there's the Honor Records. So there's the Akashic Records now. There's Nietzsche's records. And then you've got Anna's records. So it took me a week to write it all down. It's literally the logical code of the universe, forwards and backwards. And then you get to find the logical fallacies of the logical code and you get to fix it. Oh my God, it was a great week. So after you do that, that's literally like the graduation. After that, you build your own educational system. It's a thing we do. Plato's was called the Republic. And then after that, you build your own school and your own society. That's what the educational system is. You're building your own society. But you do this after you've completed your own records. It's very exciting. So when it's all done and said, and this is the great part, is it has to comply with science. All of the science. And it cannot contradict all of the science. That's like code. That's the rule. So you get done with all of this. Now, I did not calculate. Oh, Newton did it too. That's how he was able to make a lot of the assumptions. They're not assumptions because they're actually completely documented. He says the world is going to end in 2060. Newton was probably right. I came up with 2080, but I'm really curious to see because I'm sitting here looking at him going, Newton, why are you at 2060? I say it's going to be 2080. But also how we both define the end of the world is different. It's basically the end of the unnatural man sequence. The unnatural sequence of man is what we're referring to. That is the end of the world. The end of the world is not literally the end of the world. It's the end of the unnatural sequence of man. That's what's the end of the world. So Newton predicted that it's going to be 2060. I say it's going to be 2080. And now I'm kind of curious to see which one it is. Now, after I study calculus, I'm curious what my numbers are going to be and if they're going to match up to Newton's. That's really curious because right now I'm just reading off of the trajection that's not using at all calculus. It's just using mathematical probability and logic because mathematical probability and then logic replaces calculus for the most part, as long as you're not outside in the material plane, but I don't do that. So it's really, really fascinating. I'm really excited about all of this. So after that, after you do the history mystery, and then you create your own educational system and you build your own society, you're pretty much set. Like then it's life after philosophy. And that's where it's like, all right, so the moral of the story is, this is a 30-year-long study, and then when it's all over, you just go, so the moral of the story is, have a party. That is the moral of life story, guys. You got to have a party. That's kind of, and that is literally what Douglas Adams' books were really all about. Have a party. You party because you just spent 30 years studying nothing but ontology. So, and I survived existentialism, which is the destruction of ego and opinion. Annihilate. It's the annihilator of ego and opinion. So this is what people don't know is philosophy. People have no clue what philosophy is. It's the most infuriating thing is people going, what the fuck is philosophy? Yeah, it's the life, the universe, and everything and how it all fits together. It's literally the study of all 18 academic disciplines and how they integrate. So when you study English, you're actually studying 1/18 of philosophy. And when you study math, you are studying 1/18 of philosophy. And when you study physics, you are studying 1/18 of philosophy. No matter what you study, you are studying a branch of philosophy. But what you're not studying is how they all fit together into one and how you can integrate them all into a thing. And then you have some really awesome shit that then develops. And it begins as this core, which is what I refer to as the core of biology, because biology is the integration of all of these together. And then it expands. Now, if you're an artist and you're in there going, what does this have to do with me? You are actually stage one. Musicians are first, and then artists are second, and then readers and writers and authors are third. And then we get into theater and stage people, and that is the foundation of science, because this is science in real life. And that's what people don't know. Art is science in real life. And if you had studied philosophy, you would know that. So this is where you take all of the 18 disciplines, from music theory all the way up to biology. Well, chemistry and astronomy, and then you integrate them all together, and that becomes biology. Now, why biologists aren't studying the arts is beyond me, because that's really going to change a lot of things in biology, and it's going to tell a completely different picture. Philosophers know this, biologists don't, which is why philosophy is like the new cool. Anyway, when you get all of that integrated, then it becomes a perspective. Now that, by the way, that is the perspective journey. That is your learning journey of the discovered self, or the Asha journey. Now, once you integrate them all into biology, after that, you start something called perspective expansions. And now your perspective expands and expands and expands and expands. And it's levels of awareness. Your level of awareness is you have 36 levels of awareness, except you're probably at 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6, maybe. But your sequence might not, most likely is not in order, because 96% of the population has a mental illness, which means your sequence is out of order, and that's what causes mental illness, is your sequence is out of order. So once you get your sequence all figured out and aligned, which we do that here, then it all makes sense. You're okay, your logic stream goes, and then you can continue your levels of consciousness. You got 36 of them to go. Now, once you complete 36 levels of consciousness, you end up at the point of comprehension with the rod of truth, which is literally the summation of all of truth. And now you can tell who's lying to you, because you got this thing, the rod of truth, that tells you liar, liar, because it does not comply to the constant. It's the motherlode of all constants. You basically take all the constants in all the world and you integrate them together. This is how you build all of history's time and forward and backwards, is this thing, because this thing is so accurate. This thing is so accurate. It's the mother. It's the archetype. This is the archetype that Socrates was talking about. It's the rod of truth. So you get your rod of truth together, you end up at the point of comprehension, and then you start something called an expansion. And that's when your perspective, you are now stable, you are defined, you now have complete and full relativity. Now you understand shit, but now you're going to have an expansion growth. And every time you have an expansion growth, you become more and more, everything just keeps integrating into that rod of truth. So you really start to understand. And then you really start to understand. So when you start doing that growth, that's when you learn parenting. That's when you learn. This is why parenting and teaching does not have an academic discipline yet. It does now. I discovered it and I put it together. It's because no one made it to this point to sit down and actually write it down. So you have parenting, and then you have teaching and education. And then you have, this is when I discovered the shit. And then you have power economics, and you have justice. This is also why our economy is falling, is because the one we currently have is man-made from the unnatural. It's crap. And what we have here is the actual natural. It's the one that fits to the constants, and that will correct it and balance it. So then you also have justice. After justice, you end up with, the 3 steps. So these 3 things are now like pillars. And when you merge those 3 things, these are components. And these 3 pillars are story, order, logic, and philosophy. And when those 3 things integrate, you get comprehension. Now you get this massive science of comprehension. Now you're getting into linguistics physics. Did we all get that? It's linguistical physics. And you also start to create and you start to develop and see new academic disciplines coming about. Now, this is where you hear, or you might have heard something called an interdisciplinary study. That is a very simple way of explaining what this is, but an interdisciplinary study is only 2 academic disciplines. No, that's child's play. That's cute. No, we put all of them together. So this is 18 interdisciplinary studies, not 2, 18. And then all of those expansion paths are expansions above that. And every one of these expansion is a branch of and integrated on, building on and expanding on that biological core. So as we get out, we now have comprehension. And then beyond that, all of this is held together. And that's when we discover integrated mathematics. And then beyond that, we have the final mother lode. This is the science of growth. Now you understand how your mind works and the order of operations it takes to learn something. Now, when you have all of that knowledge, it's a massive step back. And that's when you go, okay, I'm going to write a bunch of books now and just be weird. And welcome to Life After Philosophy. Because what else are you going to study? You make cocktails. We call this academic discipline cooking. So that's what we do. We cook with academic disciplines. Welcome to the kitchen of science, where we just throw everything together and we mix it up and see what we've got. So right now I'm working on linguistical physics, and that is when we take physics, and that's when we take word and logic and we merge them together. And actually we don't merge them, we discovered them, and we found out that they're actually inside of it, and that words are vessels, which is why we have intensity, is because what that is physics words for volume. Look at that, they match. It's because of the same thing. That happens a lot when this all takes place. So you've got your relativity, and there's 3 factors here. There's you, little old you, and then there's Mother Nature. Now, Mother Nature, and that's it, guys. That's it. This is what you really need. Now, this is power economics, and this is what you really need to know. There is you, and there is Mother Nature. And if you have ever studied anything about electricity, then you'll know what this is. Now, these 2 things, A and B, you and Mother Nature, they interact with each other. This is called a receptor and a transmitter. And now you're going to get a circuit. That's right. We call this an electromagnetic field. You get a circuit, okay? And this circuit is now the connection between Mother Nature and you. Now, we're born with this circuit. We all know this circuit, right? Raise your hand if you know the circuit. It's called intuition. But what you don't know, unless and until you study philosophy on this level, is that intuition is actually integrated tuition. Isn't that clever? Words are amazing. Integrated tuition. Tuition originally meant learning. It meant put it inside of you. Integrate means to become one with. That's what sex is, people. It's integration. So when you put something inside of you, when you learn it, you are integrating tuition inside of you. And now you've got intuition. Now, by the time you are 2 years old, your beautiful little 2-year-old brain has already integrated tuition of logic, math, and physics, because Mother Nature is like pouring that all over the place. She's like pumping it into you, and you haven't been interference. There's a lot of things that physics has to say about interference. Because you haven't experienced interference yet, you got this great connection with Mother Nature. As soon as you're born, while you're developing, that's Mother Nature at work. So you are being made by, with, for Mother Nature. So you're really tuned in to her logic, math, and physics, which are her 3 primary languages. This is what your feelings and emotions are made out of. So when you're born, you're already like, you are literally calibrated directly to Mother Nature. And everything's going great until you're about 2 years old. And that's around the time when you start to say no, which really pisses off a lot of parents. And then mom and dad start interfering with Mother Nature's job. So when mom and dad start interfering with Mother Nature's job, they got this bright idea called the unnatural sequence of man that they think is better than Mother Nature, and they put it inside of you. And that's interference. And that completely jumbles up the natural sequence. And then you kind of get kicked to you are 100% like thrown off of the entire proper sequence. And you get this offshoot from 1955 with an alternative timeline. And that's what you do. You're living on an alternative timeline. So you got to get back to the original 1980. You got to go back to the future. That's what you got to do, is get back to the future in 1985, because mom and dad put you on this alternative timeline of 1955 when they thought they knew better than Mother Nature. So once you realize that this is really what's all going on, you realize that the natural development of sequence are the academic disciplines and the sequence of learning these 18 languages. And the more of those languages you learn, the better your vivometer gets. Now, your vivometer is your ability to communicate with Mother Nature. It's your ability to read Mother Nature. It's your ability to go, wow, this is really bad for me. I probably shouldn't be doing this. And if your vivometer is underdeveloped, most of you have an underdeveloped vivometer, you're not going to get accurate readings. You're going to be around a bunch of really toxic people thinking you're having a good time because your vivometer is broken, because you're not calibrated to Mother Nature. Instead, we end up living our entire lives calibrated to the unnatural sequence of man. So philosophy is the study of all of this. Now, a lot of people do not know about the little hiccup of the 4th century. In fact, no one knows about the little hiccup of the 4th century because only ontologists who went through the mystery of writing all of the logical code actually know about this, because they're the ones who had to put all this together. And when we put all this together, we went, wow, Roman Empire really fucked that up. So this is what happened. In the 4th century, the Roman Empire decided to declare war on all of the educational systems. It's how they imperialized. And they started this project, Operation Destroy All Education, around 350 BCE, give or take a decade. And that continued until around, well, precisely 380 CE, when they decided to burn down all of Alexandria. And then they rebranded themselves. Get this. This is as clever as The Walking Dead goes to Fear the Walking Dead. They did the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. They'll never know. And they didn't, because people were already uneducated by that point, because the Roman Empire had been working for 800 years, wiping out people's educational systems. So when they rebranded themselves the Holy Roman Empire, no one had any idea that the Roman Empire was actually the Holy Roman Empire. So that caused something called the Dark Ages. Now, what that ended up happening as a result was there was pretty much no quality education, which is really well documented. And that shitty quality of education continued for about 1,000 years, which meant for 1,000 years, no one had any actual knowledge. And my God, does it show, which is why we call it the Dark Ages. Now, around 1088 CE, a university did pop up. But this was being run by people who knew nothing about education or wisdom, because they burned down all the educational systems. So they knew nothing about science. They knew nothing about education. All they had was a bunch of notes that they hoarded, and they were trying to piecemeal everything back together. They did about as good of a job as those aliens in the menagerie in the Star Trek's original series. So that's pretty much what ended up happening, was this hodgepodge of garbage crap that they thought was the educational system, when in fact they knew nothing about education at all. And they ended up with this mutant thing. And that is what your educational system is based on, the mutant thing and the hodgepodge of the dark-aged educational leftovers. Meanwhile, the educators from the ancient Greek educational system who figured all of this out, they're the ones who developed it, put it all together in this nice little package called Plato's curriculum, which is what I found, which is how all of this was unlocked. And I went, oh my God, the Da Vinci Code is real. And this is what he was trying to say to us all. Dan Brown's an idiot. So when I put all of this together and I connected all the dots and all of this was revealed, this is what philosophy is really about. It's the science of growth. But philosophy doesn't tell you all of this because the 4th century happened and the Dark Ages occurred. And when they piecemealed all of the education back, they forgot this part, which is why no one's ever heard of any of this, which is why you got a big chunk of the origin of your education missing. And once you understand logic and sequencing, which we study in the science of growth, you realize that the origin is kind of the most important part of all. Really the most important part of all. Like, of everything to lose, you don't lose the origin. So the origin is the seed. It's everything. It's the DNA chain. Anything can be grown from the origin, but you can't lose the origin. And when the dipshits who were the Holy Roman Empire decided to reassemble what little they could find of the educational system, they forgot the origin. So as a result, 96% of the population is now mentally ill because you are missing the origin of growth. Kind of a big deal. A little bit, you know. So this is my philosophy that I got from Plato's curriculum directly, which is inside of philosophy, which when you complete the study of logic and philosophy, you get the science of growth, which contains the science of comprehension. So that is pretty much a nice summation of what philosophy is. I'm going to leave it here. Thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.